through coaching? Like, what has been like the most rewarding thing that you experience with any of these clients that you have?
That's such a good question. And once again, man, I got to give thanks to you for having me on. One of the most rewarding things for me that has happened to this date is seeing the look on this young girl's face that she was a heroin addict her entire teenage life. It was the look on her face when she realized that there were options for her in life and that there was actually a possibility that she was not enough somehow. You can see I am enough as many times as you want on social media, and it means nothing. And when she realized she could just put down the needle or anything else and move past the terrible things that had happened in her life that caused her to make these choices, and that she could get rid of these programs and move forward in spite of the mistakes she'd made, that was a game changer for me. And I was like, I didn't think that. Okay, so I'd helped people before her, and I'd helped a significant amount of people before her to know that what I was doing was good work. But until that moment, it didn't fully kick in.
I want to know more about like your journey of like finding out all of this. And like, I don't want to, kind of sound cheesy and be like, you're awakening to these sorts of things. But like, we talked about how you grew up, playing music and that whole process. But like, what was that in between that got you from like playing music and doing the lessons and being like, no, to playing on stage to where you are now? Like how did you educate yourself on all these topics that you're speaking about,
brother. All right. So because I understand how the subconscious mind works, I repeat a lot of the things that I say when I'm talking to people. I've actually repeated it so much that I pretty much say the same thing all the time to everyone, because because I understand like mind control and brainwashing and hypnosis and behavior modification and subconscious programming and chemical warfare. I do my best to try to program every person that I come across. So like, don't worry about having to take notes and stuff. I'm going to say shit so many times that you're going to know, I'm going to say the same thing so many times that shit, I know exactly when he said that thing that I was really interested in. So, and I got to say thank you again for having me on, because this is an opportunity for me to reach more of the people that I want to reach, which are the ones that are still trying to figure stuff out. And I do my best to bring to the discussion a regular guy who has a regular life, who is actually really in love with life because of an understanding and because of a story of unbecoming, if you will. And so, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, what I do is I teach people different ways to change internal dialogue and how to clear harsh memories and emotions and all of that shitty shit, and how to delete useless information. And I had to learn how to do that stuff the hard ass way at first. So anybody that's listening that's, not from the region in America or whatever, they can probably tell I've got a bit of an accent. And that's because I was born in Barbados, which whenever you say the word Barbados, again, we're programmed, it's it. And I can actually tell you, like, you can hear people referencing Barbados in TV shows like Friends as being this place that has idyllic beaches and it's so serene and it's calm and stuff like that. And not to be disrespectful to people on purpose, but the average person that lives in this country is dumb as hell. They don't know what they don't know. It's an extremely aggressive culture. It's constantly being hijacked by a disempowering message in the music, which essentially says the program is, you are nobody. You are not a Barbadian citizen. if you don't behave this way and go and grind on people and drink yourself stupid every weekend and listen to this particular music, and they actually run an ad campaign religiously every single night and day on TV and radio, where the main line in the song is "This is who we are," and then they go to present you with images of how you should act, how you should dress, how you should talk, how you should carry yourself. And I wasn't about that life. I wasn't about it at all. Like, I grew up wanting to play rock music, which in a religiously dominated society like Barbados is the devil by default. And I had hair longer than yours, buddy. And I was like the most goth guy on the planet. Eyeliner and black nails and like 8 piercings in my ears and, you know, a long beard and all this kind of stuff, and screamer in a heavy metal band and stuff. And I was really good at that stuff, and I got a lot of success in it. So let me actually backtrack and try to tie everything together in a really easy to digest way. So waking up for me was such a tumultuous experience. I was like everybody else, with my head underwater, wondering why I couldn't breathe, essentially. I wanted to be a rock star. I felt like I was somehow making progress by becoming a part of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll club. Everyone was after me for my musical ability and like my looks, and, you know, everybody was just like, oh, you're such a good looking guy. And I really ate up all of that egotistical shit that means nothing. And because I look different from the average person that lives here, that was like eye candy for a lot of people. So just based on how I looked, put me in the right rooms with people to be successful, put me in the right projects to find my way to the things that I wanted. And every project that I started found its way to some success. But I was in such a dark, fucked up state of mind that I didn't even see that any of that was happening. Like, just to give an example to anybody that still listens to like heavy metal stuff, like I found myself one time on a list of the top 25 guitarists you've got to hear. And I was at number 2 in that list. And it was with people that are like Breaking Benjamin, the guitar player from back in that time. I don't know if anybody actually, you know them or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that was when I'd first gotten signed by a label in the United States. And I'd gone through lots and lots of record label auditions and stuff. And I was completely blind to my worth, but thank God that I at least had some integrity, because every time I would get to the top, you'd get questions like, do you suck dick? You know, do you sell your ass? All those kinds of real fucking scary things. And it would be music industry execs, you know, they want to give you their personal private number. It'd be really sleazy. And I just started to wake up to that kind of stuff. And I just found that to be really freaking weird, man. I couldn't do it. I just like, there's no amount of fame that's going to be worth doing that kind of stuff. And that added to my depression because I already felt like an outcast, right? And I already felt like I was different to other people because I remember from the time I was about 6 years old, being at school and just completely zoning the fuck out. Like whatever it is they were saying was just so... This had nothing to do with anything that was going on in my life. And I was like, this is just the dumbest thing ever. And I remember one evening, they program you early from here. Like, you know how in America they have the Star Spangled Banner, and you got to know how many stars are on the fucking flag, and it's one nation under God and all that kind of stuff. Well, here they have an acrostic poem. So for those who don't know what an acrostic poem is, it's you have a word, and the letters that make up that word, there's a line in the poem that has a meaning attached to each letter. So I can't tell you what this poem is because I never learned it. I refused to do it and got into a lot of trouble for it. but it's used as a programming mechanism to trigger a certain response. Instead of using the word trigger, let me use elicit a certain response. As soon as people hear it, if you watch a political rally, you'll see their eyes glaze up in their heads and they go up like something just turned on, and they'll stand upright and get really excited and they'll start reciting this thing. And so the politician or whoever it is, or the MC or whoever is on stage says, "I say B," and that activates. So that's the implantation of the hypnotic response, and the crowd will go whatever the line is in the poem. And then he just has to say, "I say BA," and continue spelling out that word, and they will automatically just parrot back to him that poem, right? So I started to understand all of that stuff from 6 years old. The teacher beat me over my knuckles with a ruler for not doing it, all kinds of stuff like that. And I refused to comply. I refused to take part in religious education and stuff like that because my mom, when I was born, she was into her spiritual awakening, which she never really completed. She just, because she loved CNN and stuff like that. So, once you love CNN, you're a goner. Not dogging out the old lady or anything. Love her to death. But I got exposed to that kind of stuff. And so I had a hint that there was something else other than religious indoctrination. And it helped because she didn't want me to be indoctrinated. She was like, nobody's going to fucking indoctrinate my child. And so she took me out of religious education and all of the things that are compulsory for the average student here. The only kids that are exempt from that are like the Hindu and Muslim kids. So everybody else has got to get their programming in. And so because I wasn't getting my programming, all the other kids and all the teachers and stuff, "Oh, you think you're special? You're a sinner. You're the worst kind," all these different things. So I was getting like verbally attacked, So on top of that stuff, I had a lot of shit going on at home because both my sister and my father are what we now know to be narcissists. Dad's dead now, but until the day he died, he was still the same old way, very verbally abusive and like, "You're never going to be anything. You think you're better than me because you're going to the best school in the country," and all that kind of shit like that. I mean, telling your 10-year-old kid like that's going to fuck him up at some point. Like that's a subconscious program. And if I can go back now to that point in my 20s where every time I would get money, attention, success, and relationships, I would go and do something really stupid and mess it all up. And eventually, after trying to off myself like 3 times using the maximum amount of drugs and alcohol I could find, I eventually had a profound experience. And so this experience, it was what we now know as a near-death experience. So I went into this dark, murky place, and my consciousness, it interfaced with something I'd never seen before. And when I came back from that, I felt like something inside of me had changed. And it was shortly after that I went to the States to study the music industry. And as I wanted more for myself than what I had, I began to believe that if I could do that, it would eventually lead me somewhere. So I just kind of followed that rabbit hole. And I struggled a lot for a while, and I met a lot of really inspiring people. And what really changed the whole thing for me was like, I was already into learning to meditate and stuff like that. Cause I didn't have, when I moved away, I had very little money, and I wasn't making that much money from gigs and stuff. Like, you live in Jersey, so you know that if you're living in Pennsylvania and stuff and you got a gig, you got to drive a long way from where you live to get to that gig. So by the time I was able to get my ass back home, I didn't really make very much money to buy food or anything, right? So I struggled for a long time. I was staying in an apartment, and it was upstairs in this guy's house. And he was like, "Oh, it belonged to my ex-wife. And if you can clean it up, you can have it at, next to nothing." And so that really helped me out, but I had no bed or anything like that. So I had to raise myself up out of the dirt, and wanting to believe that there was something else out there other than what I knew already. was the main concept that really caused me to do as they say, when the desire to change becomes greater than the desire to stay the same, you will begin to look for all of those circumstances. Like something turns on inside of you, like the maximum potential for your consciousness then begins to activate. And Holy Spirit, activate. So like all that kind of stuff changed me. The only thing I had was meditation because I was so uncomfortable sleeping on a yoga mat. And I would achieve these really deep states of consciousness. I'd go into these different brainwave states, and I would be reading all these books by like Marianne Williamson and Robert Greene and the Dalai Lama and anything on Buddhism, the Bhagavad Gita, world religions of all kinds, the Vedas, everything, whatever I could get my hands on, I read that shit. And I thought I was going along just fine. And, you know, maybe about 6 months after doing that, I noticed that things began to change for me really rapidly. Like I was getting a lot more opportunities and stuff. And where I was at in my development, I didn't even realize that I had manifested that whole thing about going to the States in the first place, because it was through that whole being a good guitar player that this one lady from the US kind of just messaged me on Facebook and was like, yo, you are really good. And I think you got a lot of potential. Would you be open to some help? And she was like, you know, if you want, I can help you get some sponsorship. So that's how I got my visa and stuff to go out there and have that journey. And I was just so shitty at that time in my head that I didn't know what manifesting was or anything like that. And I just stuck to my guns. Like I wanted more from myself, and I was willing to have the bad day and willing to have the suffering and go without certain things. And that really took me on a fast pace trajectory of growth. And so I got really good at meditating on my own without fucking YouTube and all these apps and shit that we have. And I really started to experience these things. And as stuff manifested, like people would just give me everything I needed. I got a bed. Somebody like was randomly like, hey, dude, I'm clearing out my garage. Do you want these things? So I got a whole bunch of stuff that I needed. And like before I knew what was happening, I had a room that was full of everything that you could ever want. And I saw that was happening, and I started spreading, just like everybody else does when they turn spiritual. I started spreading the knowledge of what I'd learned wherever I saw that it was not, because I wanted other people to kind of realize that we all have this potential. And long story short, now let me try to wrap this shit up. One night I was at a gig in Allentown, and I had what I call my angel moment. I tell this story all the time. I was talking to a sound engineer about how things should be set up and stuff, because again, I keep getting thrust into the role of, this is the guy you speak to. He knows everything. Talk to him. So I was doing that, and somebody just walks up to me and he's like, hey man, I noticed you have an affinity for leadership. Have you heard of coaching? And I was like, nah, I haven't. And I gestured to the guy like, 1 second. And I turned around, I talked to the sound guy again, just to wrap up what I was saying so I could move on. And when I turned around to go talk to the guy, I was going to be like, hey, listen, you want to get a beer and tell me more about what coaching was? This guy was gone. I checked the whole bar and he was gone. So that was so fucking bizarre to me that I went home and I searched for coaching online. And of course, personal trainers and stuff like that came up. And then there was Anthony Robbins. So I'd heard of him before, obviously, because a part of that journey of meditating on the fucking yoga mat on the floor was getting involved in like MLM marketing and all kinds of stuff like that. So you get exposed to the entrepreneurship side of spirituality, the dark NLP and stuff like that. And that piqued my curiosity anyways. I just didn't realize that coaching was a thing. I didn't realize that there were actually people setting up businesses based on that. And eventually, like, my housemate let me know that he had a bunch of stuff on that, and he was interested in it as well, and he didn't know, where to start. And what some of the stuff that really got me through the darker period, where all I was doing was meditating, like I didn't have any TV or anything like that, so I had to read. And I wanted to break my own patterns of addiction without going the conventional route, because I didn't want to end up with a social label. I didn't want to be depressed or anxious or anything like that. I was like, fuck that. So I started reading books on CBT and anxiety and anything I could find on psychology and anything I could find on like hypnosis and empowering myself. And, all that knowledge started to go into my head. And then when the coaching thing came around, I wanted to go and take courses and stuff in that just the same as everybody else. And after following that, it only took me like 3 months to realize that the traditional life coach world was really designed to do anything except help you. And it's basically to extract more money from unsuspecting victims under these two conditions. And the first condition is you only need to be a few steps ahead of someone to be a coach. That's how they get you to enroll for certification. And that's how they get thousands of dollars from you. And so the second condition is that you have to invest thousands of dollars at once into some magical catch-all coaching. And then you go on to charge people the same amount of money. So they want to wrap you in with that second condition where now you're in, you're a coach now. Here's exactly how you should do it. And you should be getting paid that much because everybody deserves to be paid for their services. And like, that's the thing they drill into your head. And I was like, no, man, I got integrity and I just refuse to manipulate people for doing this. Because I really loved helping people. And I realized that the whole path of my life was pushing me towards that in some way, because I'd get off stage fucking drunk as a skunk at gigs and stuff, and people would just start talking to me about their lives, and I'd be like, oh my God, I am way too drunk for this. I cannot even fucking understand. But even when I was at school and stuff, I'd bring home all the strays. Like my mom used to say, like, you would just always bring home all the strays, all the kids that don't have nothing. And I loved being helpful to these people. So I realized that life was just setting me up for this whole thing. And once I came to accept that, and once I realized that I could only help people with the wisdom I had acquired in an honest, effective, and competent way, that made me investigate the whole industry. And so I fell down the rabbit hole. Because in learning what a coach was, obviously you're going to come across NLP and stuff like that. And I started to pull back the curtains behind the neurolinguistic programming and the psychology industry. And I found a lot of information which sent me down an even bigger rabbit hole. And so that rabbit hole is all about what I told you before. It's all about how the psychology industry and traditional coaching model, as well as, I kind of got lost there on that thought. It's how the psychology industry and the traditional coaching model, as well as the New Age movement, have been hijacked to continue this global cult of disempowerment that we all so easily buy into. So I figured out that this needed to be a part of my message going forward if I was going to really help people. And that the biggest thing missing from a lot of the personal development stuff, the books or what's online, was the how-to of it. So in order to figure out how to teach the how-to to people, I had to begin living the how-to in my own life. So I took as many certifications as I could and applied as much of the hypnotherapy, psychology, mental health practitioner courses, mindfulness instructor courses, all the neurolinguistic programming courses, cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, you name it, I did it because I was hungry for that information. I needed to know how this stuff worked. And I basically took out all the information I found actually worked in my life and I tested it for a while. And then as people came to me for coaching and I was building my coaching business up, I tested out what works, what doesn't work, what's helpful, what's not helpful, what invalidates people, what builds them up. And that just kind of strengthened me as a person as time went on. So I've been doing this for almost 8 years now. And I've just been fully committed to application, collecting wisdom, and helping people with every ounce of my soul, so that I know that everything I do is helping people break free from paradigms and the subconscious programming. So at the end of the day, that's what really kept bringing itself around in every session with people, that in my own life as well. I need to put myself first and foremost here as the biggest example. Everything I struggled with, from addiction to not feeling good enough, to not being able to make money, to screwing up every decent shot I got at music, to watching porn, to not being able to keep a good relationship. That was all subconscious self-sabotage. And so when people came to me, that solidified for me that these people are always speaking their programs and they're living in the energies of these programs, and they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Just the same way I didn't know what the fuck I was really doing until I really started to self-assess and self-regulate, right? And, you know, we got sex is in every fucking thing on TV. And even the cleanest of commercials have sexual imagery embedded in them.
I'm fucking naked right now.
That's right, baby. Fucking program them motherfuckers with that sex. And so, like, you know, porn addiction is a serious thing in the world. And luckily for me, I always tell people, it's not from an egotistical perspective or anything, but I was always so good looking that I never lacked for attention from women. And so the porn never really got a big hold on me. I never saw myself as not enough in that way. And I never saw myself as needing to emulate that behavior. But I did tackle it at certain points in my life when I felt the loneliest and discarded by people. And that was the easiest thing for me to break free from. But for the majority of people, it's the hardest. And then there's stuff that's well-intentioned, or so they say, like coffee and caffeinated tea, right? And to movies and TV and all these different things. You know, you go to the doctor, you don't feel well, you take a fucking Ambien to sleep. Like, all of these different things are real problems for people. And to me, it's not a joke. I just try to keep things hilarious so that people can understand that, you know, this shit is real and people be struggling. So you haven't said anything yet, so I'm going to take that as a cue to actually continue going, because I feel like I got a lot to say and very little time, or I might keep you here all night.
Dude, we're going to pause right here. I'm going to take a piss. I'm going to get another cup of water, and we're going to keep fucking going until you want to stop, because we're at about an hour and a half. I've done 4-hour podcasts. I've done 45-minute podcasts. The past 10 have been an hour, because it makes my life easier when I'm going back into editing. But I want to keep talking to you.
Yeah, I'm that kind of guy. So yeah, let's
more like I want to keep listening to you. Like that's I the fact that you reached out to me to do this, like as soon as you did, and I looked at your page, I was like, I shouldn't hesitate to answer him. I was like, this is going to be a conversation that is going to impact my life. And like, if it's going to impact my life, it's going to impact anybody else's life that sees it. So I'm just really grateful to have you here, man. And to hear your story and to learn about all these things that you've spent so much time learning about. Like it's awesome, man. It's awesome. So let me go get some more water. Let me take a piss, and we're going to keep going a little.
I'll do the same. Right.
I was starting to get a little cotton mouth because of my wonderful alpha GPC, lion's mane, L-tyrosine, and acetyl L-carnitine that I take to blast off into focus, and God, I love it. It's way better than the Adderall that I took in college to study. It's like my mind is actually engaged and firing on all cylinders. I love it.
Get what you're saying, man. Um, yeah. Any podcast with a piss break is a great podcast. Let me tell you.
Right? Oh man. So where we kind of left off, I would say, is like you've taken countless courses and read so much literature on coaching, and you're right, like it's so I'm so grateful. Like this all started with me just being like, I'm grateful to have you on this podcast. I'm grateful to have this conversation. And what you were talking about is all this information that you got. So like through your journey through coaching, like what has been like the most rewarding thing that you experience with any of these clients that you have?
Oh, that's such a good question. And once again, man, I got to give thanks to you for having me on. The whole reason I'm doing this is because when I needed help, this narcissistic society that I grew up in is so one-sided and short-sighted that if you say you have a problem, you're pushed away, like you're just an asshole. And if you can find a way to communicate that you're having a problem, you're automatically streamlined into this false mental health industry. And I didn't want any part of that. And I didn't like being discarded by people. So I wanted to be that person that I didn't have for everybody else that I come across. And I operate under one basic rule, which is if a person says they have a problem, they have a fucking problem. And my responsibility then is to open up the biggest can of shut the fuck up and listen that I can find and let the person tell me what the problem is. Because the problem usually isn't the problem. The problem is usually a subconscious program. So I really, as I got into coaching from my very first client onward, I kept getting good feedback from people about my personality, essentially, and my competency. And people would just tell me how much it meant to them that for the very first time in their lives, somebody actually was listening and somebody actually genuinely cared. And I was seeing them as a person who has a collection of programs that are not helpful rather than a broken person. I think it's very disrespectful to go around telling people that they're broken. And one of the most rewarding things for me that has happened to this date is seeing the look on this young girl's face that she was a heroin addict her entire teenage life. She started at like 14, and let's see, she was about 23 when I last spoke with her years ago. So it was the look on her face when she realized that there were options for her in life and that there was actually a possibility that she was not enough somehow. Like a lot of people don't know that that's an option. Like that people genuinely, they see it on memes and stuff online, and they just don't, like I said before, they don't understand what it feels like to be in gratitude or to be loved and supported by the creator. So for them, that's not an option. Like you can see I am enough as many times as you want on social media, and it means nothing. And when she realized that she could just put down the needle or anything else and move past the terrible things that had happened in her life that caused her to make these choices, and that she could get rid of these programs and move forward in spite of the mistakes she'd made, and she could go on to go back to school and study anatomy, which is the thing that she loved, and go still make use of herself teaching others about this thing, that was a game changer for me. And I was like, I didn't think that. Okay, so I'd helped people before her, and I'd helped a significant amount of people before her to know that what I was doing was good work. But until that moment, it didn't fully kick in the power of this thing. And so I don't even consider myself a coach in a lot of ways, because it's not drop and give me 20 push-ups, you son of a bitch. It's like, tell me what's going on. Let me feed back to you what I'm getting. And it embodies so many different things that it's not this shitty ass question that the build a business in the box coaches come at you with. Like, what does that look like for you? Like, that's going to drive people crazy. I'm actually listening to when a person says certain keywords, or they look in a particular direction, or they are moving in a particular way, and I'm asking questions or I'm listening, I can tell what their dominant senses are. So I can tell how they learn and experience the events of life. So that somebody will be telling me something, and it's really simple. Anybody can learn to do this in general conversation. When someone's telling you something and they say, hey, I hear what you're saying, they're auditory. It's simple as that. Some people smell things. Some people remember how they felt when they were 5 and mommy dropped them on the head because they smelled something. It was cookies in the oven. Mm-hmm. Right? So it like a lot of people aren't heard and received on that level from anyone in their lives. And it's really awesome. And it's really my honor to be a person who steps in and can provide these simple things, but can also get into the esoteric and the metaphysical and, all the other cool stuff. And because I've made my work so serious, and I've become this person that taps into as much of this stuff as possible, and I live that life, I distance myself from the paradigms of the world at large, it allows for me to be the best that I can be for every person that comes along. So it allows me to be a tool for other people to use and work through and get somewhere.
Man. It's just beautiful, man. That, like, because I've started on my journey of like, I've taken on a few people to start, they see what I do, they see, the food that I'm eating, the workouts that I'm doing, and they reach out to me in some form to be like, hey, I want this change, and what you're doing is working. And now I've been talking to more coaches. Like, I've had you on, I've had my coach Taylor, who's freaking awesome. I've been, having countless conversations with Sean, and I've had John on a bunch of times too. And the thing that like stands out to the most to me, and that you just said, is like just being there and listening to what this person is saying, like really, really listening to it, and being able to talk to them like on a human level, and not tell them you need to do this because I said so, and more being of the mindset of being like, these are the things that have helped me, and I see what you're going through. And when we can, clear out the damage that has been done to, between the food that we eat, to the lack of exercise, like literally today, one of the guys I've been coaching, he's like, Ryan, I'm down 13 pounds and I feel so much better. And like, it wasn't that I gave him this like structured, you need to eat this at this time. All I did was ask him to fill out over the week what he's eating, everything he's taking in. And like, I saw that he was pretty much doing an intermittent fasting type of eating schedule. And I just said, look, we don't need to make like these major changes. It's just being mindful of the things that you're putting into your body. And like, it's been, what's today, towards the end of February, we're getting there. And the first conversation we had was at the beginning of January, like 13 pounds down. And for him to say, I feel so much better. I didn't give him this structured exercise program and this structured, nutrition plan. Like, I just made him mindful of, I didn't make him either. Like, I just showed him, this is what you're doing every week. And it's like, it was just so that I could see what he's doing and make small, tiny changes. And I allowed him to, almost decide like, and like foster these changes. And he got to see the reward of kind of learning and doing it himself almost. And it was, I was just like, I was like overcome, like with, and it was like the start to my day too. Like, I did my meditation and I got to work and we had this conversation and I was like, damn, man, like this shit is it's so possible. But it starts with just listening to the person. It's like, it's so cool, man. It's so freaking cool. And I'm, if he sticks to it and keeps going, like, and I don't even have to say like that. It's like, I'm not sure if he's gonna, like, the fact that he's feeling better, like, is just going to motivate him way more than anything that I can tell him. Right. Like, that's it right there. And that's, when I got exposed to meditation and when I got exposed to eat real food, Ryan, like, instead of all this processed junk, like, I felt better and it made me dive deeper and deeper into it. And and just seeing someone else go, like, I'm watching someone else go through that process. And it's so freaking cool, man. It's so freaking cool.
Yeah, man. It's one of the most rewarding things ever. I tried to go back to music and just make that be my thing for a while. And my fans called me on my bullshit. They were like, man, please shut the fuck up about coaching. It's all you talk about. Please go back to work. So that's how I'm back here again doing it. And I tried to take a break from it because it started to get a little bit busy and overwhelming and stuff like that. And I love music. Music is the thing that I just love to do the most. And I don't feel like I want to do it for anybody else. It's just something I have to do. So I try to go back to that and not coach so much. And then I realized it's kind of like Superman trying to go into vacation. Like, you can't do it. People need you. And the whole time you're going to be thinking about when you used to be Superman. So it's like, like, not that I want to bring any grandiosity to the table or anything like that. I really don't see it that way. That's just the easiest, most human way I could communicate it.
Yeah.
So let me launch back into my spiel here because this is important.
Hell yeah.
So the way that I teach stuff, again, here's me programming people by repeating, it's mindfulness, not mindfulness, fullness of mind. So I teach people to be with every thought. because that's the only thing that ever really helped me. Like if you meditate for a half an hour and then you get up and somebody cuts you off in traffic, you're like, oh, you stupid motherfucker. Then you're right back down the rabbit hole again, and you haven't really harnessed your potential. So of course, not every single thing that goes through your head is necessary to be with. Like some stuff's just passing through. And we're just scanning and assigning meanings to everything. That's all the brain's doing. And so programs are coming up, and we can learn to review these things when we're just living on the breath and in the moment. And we could consciously be aware of how we like self-sabotage, or like say one of your clients is trying to get rid of a certain amount of weight off of their body, and you put them on this plan and you do what you just said, and they write down all the things they're consuming, and they realize, oh, this shit is bad, and you get them on a good eating schedule, and they're eating all the right things, they're doing all the right exercises, and they're doing well. And then something just seems to happen where they relapse. That's because they're not doing it mindfully. And you want to be as mindful as possible when you're doing something like trying to improve your health, because the reason why you're picking up a dozen donuts at the store is because when you were 5, Dunkin' Donuts commercials were running on the TV, and this dumbass looking motherfucker in a white overcoat was saying it's time to make the donuts. So you don't even realize that's going on in your head. And whenever people set out with the intention to lose weight, losing weight is like losing your car keys. Now, consciously, you panic when you lose your car keys, so you start frantically looking for them. Losing weight, subconsciously, you go frantic because you're looking for the weight that you just lost. Well, why are you looking for the weight that you just lost? Because of what Rupert Sheldrake calls the morphogenetic field. And that concept was around before him. He just did a lot of research and work on it. And we're living in this energetic bubble, which carries all the information about us and who we can become. And on a cellular level, the weight that we have is as a result of subconscious programs. And the most common one that people come to me for that's causing them to just remain fat no matter what they do is, I don't feel safe somehow. And I don't feel loved by God somehow. I need to protect myself from the external world by being really big, being really fat. And so people try to transfer that and become actually power lifters and stuff like that to try to turn that fat into muscle, but they're still carrying the program. And then you have bodybuilders who do the whole on-season, off-season cycle, and in between they get really fat. And they're like, I don't know why I'm getting really fat, so now I got to work really hard. And they're carrying that information in a morphogenetic field. So the slower and the more intentional you can be about your nutrition and your workout plans, and then add mindfulness into that mix, the mind does its thing, because the mind is always saying, is it okay to keep this thing? And then it shows you an image or a movie, or a sound will play, or you smell cookies, or whatever it is. And it's your responsibility to question that to death and figure out, well, why is this coming up? Because that tells you what the program is. And once you figure out what the program is, then you can get rid of it. And you can do that the linear way by repetition, making better choices over and over. It really only takes 21 days to rewire a bad habit, which is a subconscious program, right? But it has to be something that empowers you, and it has to be phrased in a way that it's going to be joyful. And you have to learn how to brainwash yourself the same way the motherfuckers are brainwashing you every day, day in, day out. And you have to learn how to look for these things in the culture around you, so that when you see it, you're consciously aware of it. And so that overrides your subconscious need to identify with safety and what the herd is doing, etc. So people try to call me on this, and they say that mindfulness doesn't work and stuff like that. And I say no, because when you are consciously aware of how you self-sabotage and you're having reactions, again, react means to act in a way that you have before. And people try to come at me with, well, I have reactions and I didn't act like that ever before. And I say, yes, you did, you bitch. Yes, you did. Because your subconscious is responsible for playing the program, which responds to whatever you perceive is happening. So it's important that we don't redirect our focus from the thoughts as it's traditionally taught to us in the whole mindfulness meditation world. Because in that moment when a thought's coming at you and your mind's trying to become still, the goal is never to become still. The goal is to be with the thought, and you and the thought hang out and have a party together and be happy. So it's presenting you with the opportunity to change the direction of your lives and the quality of it by just paying attention to a simple thing, by taking 100% personal responsibility for the way you process information. So if you're eating, let's talk about the limbic system, since I'm going to talk about this kind of stuff. Like, the limbic system is basically fight or flight. So for most people, being by themselves is a dangerous thing. It's just not going to happen. So all of the things that we use that we think are normal because they're socially acceptable, it's all stuff that's entrained in us. Like, again, sorry, Hollywood, the movies, the music, coffee fucks up the limbic system, caffeinated tea, porn fucks you up, sugar messes with the limbic system, fried foods mess with the limbic system, pizza, all that shit activates different responses from our brains. So the quality of people you hang out with matters as well, because the quality of your thinking matters the most. Are you in fight, flight, or flee? If you're not in homeostasis, you're not giving yourself the best conscious ability to actually live your life and be in joy when you're living your daily life. So the ability to notice how subconscious programs play out around you is probably the best skill that you could have, because it's still looking for safety inside of that collective reality. And this is how we end up hanging out with people who drink, who smoke, who all they do is they have negative conversations. And then we start by default to mirror them, because we have mirror neurons inside of us that turn on when we see something. So, people ask me, like, what about Travis Scott? Why did all those people die at the concert? I said, well, I didn't kill him, so I can't tell you why, but just to fuck with him a little bit. But then I tell him, because of mirror neurons, when you go to a concert, when the artist is dancing around and singing and doing their routine, you are playing out a scenario subconsciously where you think you're doing it because your mirror neurons are activated. And that makes you feel safe, and it makes you feel really good about yourself, and you think you're being entertained. So no shit, Sherlock, that so many people are going to get, killed off like that. And everybody's just going to be singing along to what he's doing. And this dumb motherfucker's up in the stage singing Dead with the fucking auto-tune on, and people are legit dying, and he doesn't seem to care. Well, why is that? Because 90% of people are brain dead puppets that are being manipulated by their biology, and the people who know this know how to manipulate that more than anything else. And that's the reason for the stage lights and all that kind of stuff, the flicker rate, and having the atmosphere being lit up and using the haze and the fog and all that kind of stuff changes your brainwave state. I actually used to get really dizzy sometimes on the stage when they would put too much fog and too much strobe lights and stuff, because it would be so much of a change so rapidly in my brainwave state that I would be like, whoa, man, am I stoned? Everything's moving so slow. And the only moments from the show that I would remember the next day would be those ones. Curious, right? So remember I told you I would do some things, the divine would come down and it would be like somebody else was animating me. Well, those would be the moments that would pull me away from the divine, and I would remember those. So that's just one way of how things can kind of fuck with you. But here's a simple tip for everybody. You don't have to go into meditation in a monastic sense. Like, you don't have to cross your legs and all this shit. Like, a simple tip is to just start analyzing the things that are familiar to you. What are your familiar emotions? What are your familiar vibrations that you love? What are your familiar thoughts? What are your familiar behaviors? What's the lyrics to the music that you're listening to. Those are your programs. Those are the things that your identity binds to. And the more you poison yourself with the coffee and the alcohol, et cetera, and the pizza and the sugar, the chances are that like the more your limbic system is being activated. And so you need more of that stuff because there's more reward centers in your brain lighting up like a fucking Christmas tree. And you have to be aware, like you said, diet, what you're putting in your body and what you're putting in your mind. And I think this is a good way for me to jump into stuff like porn and stuff, because it's such a big deal for a lot of people who really don't know how to break free from that. Like putting an app on your phone's not going to help you block porn. You're going to find sex wherever you look for it, and it's already everywhere. So like it affects neuroplasticity, and neuroplasticity is just the brain's ability to change as a response to its environment. And so this means that our brains are a literal reflection of what we put in it. So we always have the choice to learn how to directly focus how this process goes for us, or we can allow it to be outsourced. And most people are just okay without letting it be outsourced by everything except for them. And the real statement that I would urge anybody listening to this to think about is everything that we do every day is shaping our brains in some way, healthy versus unhealthy. It's very polarized. It's like how Play-Doh, plastic, can be molded into different shapes. Our brains are exactly the same as that material. So the gray matter, which really is just the unmeasurable space in our brain, is the reward center. And I think I got tied up there on that. The gray matter in the reward center, the space that we know it exists, but we can only see it on brain scans, essentially, is the easiest way to say that. That part of the brain is so much smaller in people who watch porn. And scientists have done countless tests. So like you can look and find this information anywhere. I'm just saying this because never underestimate the power of planting a seed. Somebody might be struggling with porn addiction. Men and women alike struggle with it like crazy, man. And it's a hard habit to break. And it's because scientists have said that in their results, they realize that alcohol and meth and cocaine are bad on this reward center. Porn is even worse than all these things. Porn is worse than heroin. So the more you watch porn, the more your brain lights up, and then it overloads that reward center. Once you short circuit that reward center, there's no going back. So the first time you watch it, it feels like it's a novelty. It feels really good. And then it quickly wears off, and you just kind of have to watch more and more and more to get that same level of activity in the reward center. So porn is like a fucking straitjacket for the mind, because then it locks you into this really centralized focus, and it's the only thing that you can think about all day long. It's the only thing you're interested in. It's all like, when's the next time I'm going to whack my fucking weasel? Is all you can think about. And it's just so really fucked up for you. Like even then, trying to delete subconscious programs around porn, you can delete all the not enoughness, and you can delete all the safety aspects to it and stuff like that. And yes, you can delete them. Like, I'm making it sound very simplistic. You can delete this shit. And there's no guarantee that you're going to be free from something like porn immediately, because of the tremendous amount of damage that it does to your brain. On the brain scans of itself, the activity in the brain of alcoholics and drug addicts differed from porn users. Like, you could see, if you go and look it up for yourself, you'll see like the alcoholic and the drug users have very little activity happening in this one centralized area. And with the people watching porn, it's like crazy. Even in people who just watched it for the first time for the sake of doing that study in the control group. So it's nuts. That hijacks you. Alcohol hijacks you just as bad, and for other reasons, including metaphysical reasons. But I'm talking about porn first because the people who make the porn are well aware of all of this research. And you have to understand that they are in in the best ways possible, the best marketing people you could ever want. And they're subconscious mind architects. That's what they are. They know that repetition is key to getting people hooked on their product. They know that once anyone, male or female, is exposed to it, they're fucked. They know it changes the brain in an irreversible way. And sex is everywhere for that reason. So it's a control mechanism. And obviously, for the majority of users of porn, the result is masturbation, which is short-lived because you get like 30 seconds of feeling pleasure. And then that's followed by hours, sometimes days of shame and guilt. And yet it's the only thing you can think about. And so the next day or whatever, people report feeling like something is actually controlling their minds and controlling their bodies, which is the most interesting part about it, because with alcohol and stuff, people say the same thing when they get really, really drunk. They say the same thing. People who are on like heroin and the really hard stuff, meth and cocaine, they say sometimes they feel like somebody else is in their body. And, you know, we get exposed to all this imagery from the time we're kids. And don't even get me started about like Family Guy and Disney movies and the Skittles packages and stuff like that. But that's all a part of the mass mind manipulation, the propaganda and mind control that we're subjected to. And you can only live an empowered life if you understand that it's literally everywhere. And
so hold on. So we've just, you know, told people about how it's destroying the reward centers in the brain, right? So someone that's watching this is now realizing this. What's their next step?
The next step is to notice what you're noticing. When you feel that first urge to go and, I don't know, scroll through Tumblr and look at porn GIFs or go on Pornhub, like however you access these things, what does that mean for you? Like, for what purpose? If you don't stop and you actually engage in a conversation with yourself about what's the reason that I want to go and do this, then you'll never get an answer, and then you'll automatically carry out that subconscious program. So it's kind of like they do at Alcoholics Anonymous. Awareness is the first step. Awareness is the first step in anything you want to do. Even if you're happy with something that you currently have and you're like, okay, how can this be better? You have to get an awareness as to how it could be better. And you have to put pen to paper or put, you know, your best thoughts towards yourself, not in a judgmental way, but you just have to be really good at respecting yourself and say, all right, hey man, for what purpose do we want to go and watch porn? Because it's hardly ever about being horny. Everybody's horny all the fucking time. Dude. Like if everybody actually just worked on that impulse and like banged everything the instant they were horny, like we'd just be fucking each other all day long. So the question is, how come some people can do it and others can't? Well, you've gotten exposed to this thing, and so this reward center is what gives you that rush. And then you start playing out the program because beating your fucking meat makes you feel safe. Like for ladies, flicking the bean makes you feel like somebody. And a lot of women, let's use the women, because we know the dudes are nuts. The women can be carrying around all of these feelings about being unsafe for several reasons. And this is not to be disrespectful to women or to feminists or anybody like that, but the whole feminist movement is based on mass overgeneralizations, which are projected onto us by people who are trying to divide and rule. Now, you rule people by dividing them. You rule people by implanting ideas that create separation. And we're all exactly the same. We all fundamentally carry out the same behavioral patterns because men and women are both human. It's just different chemical responses to things. And so when women are taking in this programming, not necessarily from a feminist context, but from the media, that men are bad, and then you have the disempowerment of men coming down the pipeline by getting dudes to have their ass hanging out in public because a rap song said do it. You're feminizing the men and you're making the women become overly masculine because now they have to protect themselves because they can't trust these fake ass weak men. And women are looking for mate value, which is the biological component to looking for a partner. And if they don't see you as being an alpha, if they don't see you as being a man that can handle his business and provide and do what the traditional role is, they're not going to feel safe. It doesn't matter even if they're a lesbian. Their brains work the same way. And so they're looking to establish mate value. Can you provide for me and keep me and the children safe? A lot of people don't want to hear that shit. But what is it they're using against us in the pandemic? Follow the science. If you follow the science for long enough, you're going to find the actual science on anything. And you're going to realize there's more to human behavior than we're told at school. And we're told at school for a reason how to not talk to ourselves when we start getting hooked on porn. So we don't know how to be our own best friend. So back to that whole thing, because we're manipulated on such a level, the next urge is going to be to supplement the porn with something else. And that's the nature of self-sabotage. And not to diss anybody that likes sports, because I know you just told me you like soccer and stuff like that. It is better to be a contributor, to be a player of the sport, than to be a consumer, because sports is another way that we're controlled as well. You have to understand that the majority of people who watch that stuff go into stadiums and they're drinking alcohol or they're drinking coffee, and they just want to identify with what other people are achieving in their lives because they feel so inherently shitty about their own. And so with the porn thing, to stop, the very first step is you need to question that very first urge. And if you ask a question and it's phrased around what rather than why, because as soon as you say why, you're going to get a meaning that's rooted in victimhood. But as soon as you say, so what's the reason, you're going to get an answer. And the mind is going to say, okay, is it okay to keep this? And it's going to show you events from your life where you picked up this habit. And it's for you to take responsibility and own the fact that you are internalizing some feeling of not being good enough for yourself based on something that has long passed you. And so now you play out this program that because I don't feel good, I need to go and watch porn, beat my meat, right? So that's just one side of it. And in order to get into the technicalities of it, we'll be here for like 3 hours, much longer. But it's all just, how do we control the herd? How do we get the majority of people to consume these destructive things? Because if we can mess with their brains, they'll pretty much do anything we do, and they'll keep working and pumping out more money for us, or whatever it is that they feed on, right? Whatever it is these people get out of this. And this is where I'm going to launch into the propaganda stuff. Like, it's super important that people, along with developing healthy questioning frameworks for themselves, they understand the psychology of manipulation and mind control, and to know when external events are going to be rooted in some propaganda and subconscious programming. Because once you know what to look for, you can manage your emotions and your judgments on something a lot better. And because waking up is an ongoing process until the day we die, you have to remain in non-judgment and acceptance. And you have to be able to be with the collective reality and not let that dictate your actions and your thoughts so much. And it's better to be in a state of total understanding for yourself if you're struggling with something than to be in judgment over this thing you're struggling with. Like, no, like we got stuff like UFC and stuff like that, and the guys are just fucking going at it and trying to beat the living crap out of each other. And that is so much different in contrast to a well-organized, well-executed martial arts exhibition where the two guys are being extremely mindful and they're paying attention to each other's energy. You kind of want to be like that because it's like Aikido in a way where you just, whatever energy the person gives you is your attack. And so the mind is the same way. Whatever energy comes up that you don't want to sit with, that's your attack point. Don't let it linger and don't let it fuck with you and don't let it become this thing that gets you really angry and you feel hopeless. You just have to begin by understanding that, yeah, the curse is the thing that I can turn into my biggest blessing by shifting this, by questioning myself and figuring out where is all of this coming from, because it's just not coming from nowhere. It's not coming just to screw with you. It's telling you that you think something about this event. And for people, a good starting point is to, if you're listening at home, just get a piece of paper and seriously just write on a piece of paper, A plus B equals C. And A is activation, whatever activates the emotion. C is the consequence, the emotional consequence. And in between is B, the belief about it. Whatever you think about that thing, that's your answer right there. That's what you have to work on. And so because so many people are carrying around unhealthy, like Albert Ellis says, Albert Ellis is the founder of rational emotive behavioral therapy, which was a precursor to cognitive behavioral therapy. He says most people are walking around with irrational shoulds in their head, and they're carrying out what's called masturbation. So they're imposing all of these unhealthy musts on themselves and other people, which behind those things that you're telling yourself you must do is I'm not good enough somehow. So if you can start to work backwards, and it doesn't happen all at once, the journey of becoming your own boss is a long one. But if you're willing to just take small steps and get very curious about what it is that you could be thinking about something, you're going to find your beliefs and you're going to realize that you made a lot of conclusions on things that are very open-ended. And a lot of the conclusions that you make are based on worldviews that come from other people, or they come from your parents, or something happened and it's the emotion of what happened that hardwired a feeling into you. And now everything that's like that, because the subconscious is scanning the environment, is going to play the same reaction program over as a coping mechanism to deal with the thing that doesn't make you safe. So the subconscious wants to know, okay, how do we get to safety? Whack off. How do we get to safety? Well, last thing I heard, the best part of waking up is Folgers in my cup. Let me go drink some coffee, because I can't deal with the shitty reality that I've created for myself. So I need to blind myself to it by drinking 2 or 3 cups of coffee every day. Coffee is a really great tool for the so-called elites to program you, because when you drink it, you tap into the limbic system, yes, but you also begin to change into a receptive brainwave state where you are now more easily able to control because you're taking in whatever people say to you. And same goes for drinking too much caffeinated tea. Don't do it, because the long-term effects of caffeine is that it's very toxic to the brain. So even for people that use like pre-workout and stuff, don't use a lot of that crap, man. Like, you have all the energy you need available to you. You can lift 500 pounds without the fucking pre-workout. Like, you might need to get a little bit of something in there to give your body more energy.
I'm the proof. I don't take pre-workout. I do.
Yeah.
I have in the past week and a half. So this is awesome that you're talking about caffeine, because in the past week and a half, I have severely dialed back the caffeine. Like, in terms of like supplements and like all the stuff that has like artificial sweeteners and all this like poison chemicals. Like, I haven't done any of that stuff in forever. And I've really dialed it down to, if I am going to, if I do need, any sort of energy. Like I'll drink yerba mate, and I started taking those supplements that I was talking about before, alpha GPC, L-tyrosine, acetyl L-carnitine, and lion's mane. And I've been doing a lot of the different mushrooms like lion's mane, cordyceps. The Stamets 7 is got a whole bunch of all 7. I love Paul Stamets. He's the research and development that he's done with mushrooms is incredible. And so I've done a lot of, because over the past month my body has been like not wanting the coffee, not wanting the caffeine. And like through my conversation with Taylor, he showed me different things that I can take that are just more mind stimulating. And especially because like I was taking 200 to 400 milligrams of caffeine, just little capsules of caffeine anhydrous before working out. And I was, that was at 6 p.m. and I wasn't falling asleep till 1 a.m. and getting up at 6, 7 a.m. to get ready for work. But I was also drinking, 2 or 3 cups of coffee and my yerba mate and taking mushroom supplements. And the whole time it's like it's not that I'm getting more energy and able to go through the day. It's like, it's just the program. It's just going and going and going. And it's like, I see now so much more. Like now what I'm doing, when I'm tired, it throughout the day, it's what am I doing right now that I'm tired? And it's more of the program of like, I'll be at work and not breathing right. I'll be at work and I didn't drink enough water, and I but intermittent fasting, and like I drink 150 to 200 milligrams or milligrams ounces of water a day, and that was, but I was still feeling dehydrated, and so much of that was because of how much caffeine I was taking. And as soon as I dialed back the caffeine, my skin was less dry. I actually had more energy. It's so cool to like hear you talk about this, because I was unaware of how caffeine affected the limbic system, and it just, once you hear something and you're like, all right, like my body was telling me like this wasn't what I needed, and I was able to find, the fact that the meditations in the morning, and like sometimes I'll take a nap after work before I work out, and now taking these, they act almost as like brain stimulants, but I feel like that's not the right word for it. But I feel so much better is basically what I'm getting at through all of this, is dialing back the caffeine. But you're making me also think, like, do I need those other brain supplements, and do I need these other things? And because what happened was I was still in I'm in the phase that you were talking about, the replacing the thing. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, and I'm hearing you talk about this, and this is what's, playing through my head. And I'm going back to like, well, why did I think I need these things? And it was because that first hockey game in college, when I took a pre-workout and I had crazy amounts of energy and I was speeding all over through the freaking rink and had a great game. And I was like, okay, now I need that in order to play that well again. Right. Like that's where that was the program. And that went in through, my whole career playing hockey and my powerlifting career. And then I started dialing back and eating real foods and seeing, eating an orange actually does give you immediate energy. Like, and it also gives you all these vitamins and nutrients. And And the reason why I was tired when I got to the gym is because I drive 40 minutes from my job to my gym, and I'm driving and I'm not focusing on breathing right. And just the vibrations of the car. Like I've always felt tired after long drives and stuff. So what I started doing was taking a nap right when I got to the gym in my car. And then as soon as I took that nap, 20 minutes, set the alarm, pop out of there, and I got all this energy.
Yeah, let me give you some insight there, because that's a really great point. And people are unaware that the majority of energy that we use is used by the brain. So if you have to go on a long drive to the gym and you're tired from just driving, because your subconscious mind knows the route to the gym, and it takes all of that energy away from you before you get to your workout. So you're like, oh man, now I need a coffee because so one self-sabotaging thing just kind of builds on top of the other over and over and over like that. And we don't even realize we're doing it. And so the journey is about having the courage to notice those things when you do notice them, and try to notice a little bit more after that and a little bit more after that. And you just slowly start taking stuff away. Don't do it all at once. You start slowly taking stuff away and repetitively teach yourself to override that subconscious urge until that thing that you used to do is now your new habit, right?
Man, this has been fucking so good, man. We're at, I think, 2.5 hours now, and I like I want to take this podcast and I like want to split it up into 3, just because like like most people will watch like 15 minutes and then get sidetracked and then, go. It's like, I want everyone to see every bit of this freaking podcast. Like it's been, I've just sitting here listening, I've learned so much, man. And so thank you so much for doing this. I am going to have to call the time on this, because I do have to get to bed, man. And you're an hour later than I am. So
absolutely. Well, man, evil doesn't sleep, so I got to be up just the same.
That's right, man. So please tell everybody how they can, follow you and learn more from you. Where can they find you?
Yeah. So if you want to just have a chat with me, you can get me on Instagram at Jehan Sattaur, and that's JehanSattaur. And if you want to listen to my podcast, you can go to my website, jehansattaur.com/boundless authenticity. And you can email me at jehantwsattaur@gmail.com. So let me spell that one: JehanTwsattaur. I don't have to spell Gmail for you, do I? Like, so yeah, I'm always good to have a chat with somebody. Maybe somebody's struggling with something really silly, and maybe a 10-minute conversation with me can help. I don't really give a shit.
It absolutely can, because this is 2.5 hours and my life has changed dramatically. Like, dude, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You 100% are welcome back anytime. I cannot wait to have more conversations with you, man, whether it be in the DMs or on podcasts, man. I'm really grateful that you reached out, man. I'm grateful that I know you. I'm really grateful, man. Thank you so much for doing this. To everyone that has hung in and watched this podcast, thank you so much. I hope this has helped you as much as it's helped me. This conversation it's been amazing, man. I have so much to think about in my meditation before I go to sleep, and thank you for
awesome,
doing this,
man. Well, I'm glad I could provide some value for you. Let's come back and do part 2, and I'll follow up on the things like propaganda and the mind manipulation, and how like they just pretty much infiltrate your subconscious mind with operant conditioning and classical ways of conditioning and different things like that, all the stuff in music, and how even the Matrix messes with people, like the concept of the Matrix and the movie itself, how they kind of give you the information, but they make fun of you at the same time.
Everybody, follow this man, listen to his podcast, and until next time, spread peace, love, unity, and respect. We're out.